Got it.
Or the dog people.
All right, good morning. It is 10 a.m. Thursday, no, it's not Thursday, October 10th. It's Friday, October 10th. Just reading the agenda. Beach Ad Hoc Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Purpose of our session today is hear from our second opinion, and we've got Chris Creed with us online, and we'll, Douglas, I'll just turn it over to you and let you introduce him. And
Yes, so as you will recall, part of what this committee recommended was to go out, get a second opinion. You all chose Foth Olson, and we have Chris here and Evan with Foth Olson to go over their report. The report's in your packet. And with that, Chris and Evan, if you just want to kind of go through a little bit of your progress, your process, and then we'll go to Q&A after that, if that works for everybody.
Yeah, can we ask him to do a little, would you mind doing a little intro about your firm? You've got a fairly respectable firm and with a lot of resources, and it would be nice to hear a little bit about what your firm's about, please.
Sure. Good morning. I'm here with Evan Haig, my colleague here at Foth Olson. My name is Chris Creed, and I am a coastal engineer. I was with a firm, Olson Associates, located in Jacksonville, Florida, since 1992. Started my career with Eric Olson, and I'm still here. Olson Associates was sold to a larger engineering firm last year in July of 2024, and we were integrated into their Ports and Harbors group, which expanded our resources from about 14 people to about 75 people on the Ports and Harbor side, and so and also expanded our services with that. But what we're doing in Jacksonville is still the same thing I've been doing for the last 33 years, and that's focused principally on beach management. A relevant client that I have worked with since 1992 is the town of Hilton Head Island, and I've been integrally involved in all of their beach management activities since over that 34 year period. And currently have a project, our latest beach restoration project under construction. Evan, my colleague here, is a more recent addition to our team and brings in a lot of expertise from an engineering perspective as well as a geotech perspective and a lot of work with the bar sites. So Evan has helped me review the massive amount of information that we were handed for this review to try to distill it down to a manageable form so that we could hopefully put together some thoughts and ideas for your committee for you to think about, and hopefully it's useful to you. So that's our background. I have a brief presentation I was going to go through that was just going to try to summarize very quickly the highlights of our findings, if you guys are okay with me spending 10 minutes doing that.
Yeah, Chris, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's hope this works, Evan, that I'm able to share this correctly. So we'll see what happens here. We practiced this yesterday. So I'll start with this, and I will attempt to start this as a PowerPoint show. Okay. All right, Evan. I guess I didn't do it. Can you guys see my screen?
No, it looked as though it was trying to share your screen, but then it...
Okay, let's try again. Oh, I know what it's doing. Here we go. Now.
There you go. That's it.
Let's see if it will kick off like this. Yep. Can you see it's like a full screen now?
Yep. And Evan didn't even have to help you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so here we are. Just a little background, what we were asked to do, and really the first thing was review the massive amount of information that's been produced by your community and your consultant over the past couple of decades, which was a lot of information, a lot of very good information, and so we were pretty. We were able to pretty easily go through most of that. It's consistent with what we find in the practice as a whole, with the type of information and the type of approaches that are applied to to this type of beach management problem. We were asked to identify possible solutions and alternatives to reduce the erosion and the effectiveness of future renourishment projects. I know that's a goal of most communities now, particularly given dwindling sand sources and the cost to access and use those sand sources. So, your problem, a theme here is your problem, although it is a little unique, but it's not unique in the big picture. A lot of communities are facing similar problems now as well. Identify the possible, what's happened on the south end of the island. Why is it going from an accretional condition to an erosional condition? And we have some thoughts on that. Obviously, you guys may be aware of that already. And is there a relationship between what you guys have done on the island and these changes that we see at Breach Inlet? And we'll touch on that and go from there. We reviewed, just real quick, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This was right straight from the RFP, stuff that was provided to us that we spent time with. Didn't dig into details. There was some repetitive information, so we tried to focus on stuff that we thought was relevant to our work. Everybody's familiar with this. This is how your program's been set up, and the reason I present this, went into my lines. Oh, here we go. Yeah, the reason I present this is we wanted to use these reaches and talk about where we focused our attention in the study. We didn't really spend much time in reaches 3 and 4. It's less problematic there at this point in time, and we hope it remains that way if we implement prudent beach management practices on the areas of reach 1 and 2 and 5 and 6. We believe reaches 3 and 4 will continue to be in the condition that it has been historically. Obviously, on the north end, we'll start there. Our focus was on this type of event that it is unique to your community, but there are other examples out in the world like this. We've just seen a recent example down in Palm Beach County at Jupiter Inlet, where something similar, but not to this magnitude, is occurring and affecting the shoreline in a similar manner. These are these shoal attachment events here at Dewey's Inlet, where the shoal migration comes across the ebb shoal and approaches the island, and we find that the shoal itself, the shape of it, is as it approaches the island, is contributing to these problems. So on north end, we look at on the north end, the localized erosion rates that occur do not appear to be manageable through sand placement alone. You guys all know that. You've done it twice and have implemented what appears to be a reasonable beach nourishment project, but these shoal events induce such a high erosion rate in very localized areas that they're not manageable with sand placement alone. And so, and also what the work that you guys have done in the past with the smaller sand scraping projects also do not just appear to be scaled appropriately to address the magnitude of the problem. So the need is to provide more consistent beach conditions on the north end of the island, reduce these localized effects of the shoal migrations and attachments, and reduce the long-term demand for sand. So any type of improvement to a beach management program is like, how can we reduce the amount of sand that we need into the future, and what actions do we have to take to do that? And that's a pretty general statement to both the north and south end. And by the way, I've adopted the north and south end nomenclature for the island, and in the historical document, sometimes it was referred to as the east and west. We adopted the north and south and tried to be consistent in what we wrote. We've seen it referred to both ways. So anyway, that's just getting past that. And possible approaches that we explore are, proactive shoal management and the use of shore stabilizing structures. And I use the word strategic, but purposefully, because I think that it does have to be strategic, and there are appropriate applications for structures and there are inappropriate applications, and also how they're designed and implemented is also very important and part of the strategy for doing so. So again, these are concepts that we've sketched out on the back of a napkin, pretty much, other than we've prettied them up in PowerPoint form. But the concept here is, let's address the problem before it gets to you. Is there a way that we can manage these events away from your shoreline so that they are that you eliminate the localized problem as the shoal approaches, but also you provide a sand source. You short circuit this event. This is a concept, and this is an idea. The reality of this, marching through the regulatory process, is going to be difficult, but you can find success in the regulatory process by demonstrating need and coming up with creative ways to address a problem. So I think there would be some challenges in the regulatory process with implementing a concept like this, but I'm not convinced it's impossible. And so it's something I think that definitely needs to be explored in more detail. And this is the concept here is that you're not trying to establish a line of defense. You're trying to address the problem that's causing, the issue that's causing the problem. The other approach is to establish a line of defense. This could be implemented with or without shoal management practices. You just maintain the status quo, but identify, hey, we want to establish a minimum shoreline with the use of shore stabilizing structures so that we can survive these periodic challenges that occur as these shoal attachments occur. And so this is a different type of strategy of managing the north end of the island. In the background of all this, continued sand placement here through renourishment using offshore sources is expected. The idea is how can we do it with a lower amount of sand and to reduce the long-term demand on the resources and the cost. Here's an example where we implemented a similar strategy to a pretty localized problem on the Hilton Head Island a couple of decades ago. This is actually in Port Royal Sound, but we use breakwaters. In this instance, my concept is breakwaters. Groins can also be considered. We like breakwaters because they influence the wave climate versus retaining sand. And so they function a little bit differently. And then this is an example here. And then we did quite a bit of monitoring to shows the shoreline evolution through time and the response to these breakwater structures. Reaches 1 and 2 real quick. The idea is, we had a really nice long-term trend of accretion that changed. And we believe it changed around 2010, 2011. It could have been happening progressively over time. And then was just kind of flip the switch due to a storm or storms or something happened during that time that has changed it. But we've seen through time that there's no evidence that this trend will revert to historical conditions. It's actually accelerated recently, and we believe there's a relationship to what's going on there at Breach Inlet. We would like to restore that beach to historical conditions. Obviously, would require sand from an exterior sand source, from an exterior, not immediate to your beach system or shoal system, from an offshore source. Management of this current sand loss rate. How can you live if this current rate is going to persist? How can we live with it? Sand placement alone might not be the strategy to do that because the sand loss rates are probably too high to do that. And then we also want to provide more beach conditions, more consistent beach conditions and protection. And those are possible approaches there. Comprehensive restoration with a compatible sand source, emphasis on compatible, offshore versus the ICWW sand. We do make comments in our memo about our concerns with the compatibility of the sand from the interior waterway. Obviously, it's an opportunity that should be taken advantage of, but we tend to find that those sand sources are finer and do not perform as well as sands that are compatible, meaning they are similar in grain size and other characteristics to the sand that occurs naturally on your beach. And implementing shore stabilizing structures, all of the above. We've had experience with this, implementing what we call a terminal groin that can be, again, strategic in terms of allowing some sand to still pass by that structure while maintaining a desired beach condition. Again, this is a concept sketched on the back of a napkin and prettied up here. Has to be a lot of engineering and design work in here to determine what the scope and scale of that structure should be and how much sand would need to be placed to create this residual condition. We've also done this type of structure when the terminal groin is not as long, and we try to address the curvature of the island, and we do a series of structures, a terminal groin and a detached breakwater. There's other scenarios we can consider as well. to ultimately also provide the same type of effect of, hey, what is the minimum beach condition we can maintain? Again, this does not this does not preclude the need for future renourishment. There will continue to be a need for renourishment along both the south and north end of the island. The idea is, can we implement measures to reduce that and the amount of that, and also put it on the same schedule to which can reduce your mobilization costs through time. This is Amelia Island up here, down here in Florida. Also a sea island, just like Isle of Palms. This is one of the southernmost sea islands in the Sea Island chain. And the southern end of the island, it really had a similar problem to what we've seen here at Isle of Palms back in the 1990s. And a historical shoreline shown here with the white line. We implemented several beach nourishment projects that without the structures that don't perform very well, but in 2004 we're able to scope and permit this structure configuration here. I've highlighted them with these dashed lines. That's where the structures are. It's a low-crested terminal groin at the southern end, so you can still see there's sand on the north and south side of it, and which provides benefit to both sides of the structure. And we haven't completely cut the sand source off to the sound and implemented the breakwater there. Recent changes on the south end. I'll cut right to the chase. We're concerned, and this is just kind of fiddling around on Google Earth during the process of thinking about your problem, and saw this, and I've basically hypothesized that this may be a contributing factor to what we're seeing. A change in the tidal prism it can have significant impacts. I explain what a tidal prism is. That is the amount of water that can flow in and out of an inlet over a tide cycle. And if an inlet is more efficient, meaning it's bigger and less resistant to water flowing in and out, that tidal prism can increase the amount of water. It can increase the water velocities because it's over a fixed amount of time change. And that can have effects to the entire inlet system, change the shape of the shoals, change the size of the shoals, and then where, in instances where the shoals and adjacent shorelines have such a close relationship as they do at Isle of Palm, it can have an immediate impact to the adjacent shoreline. So this is really one of the most prominent things that I found that I thought could be a contributing factor to what we're seeing on the south end of the island. Obviously, recent hurricanes and storms didn't help anything, and could have exacerbated the problem. This whole idea that there was a trigger that occurred at some point in time had flipped us from an accretional trend to an erosional trend, could have changed the system, on top of this background condition of an increased tidal prism. And obviously we've got the effects of sea level rise in the past and long term and the future that we think will continue to exacerbate the problem. So a quick conclusion, the bottom line here is based upon the performance of past projects on the north end of the island, recent changes in the documented erosion rates on the south end of the island. We do not believe sand placement alone will be an effective and sustainable solution for you. I think the sand loss rates need to be addressed. They need to be reduced to use sand placement as a continued management practice. So that's where we jump into these more proactive solutions and actions, providing more reliable beach conditions and protections with shoal management structure implementation. We want to reduce the demand on available resources. Resources are not unlimited, and your number one resource for a program is sand, and the effect of that on your program from a long-term cost is the cost of that sand. Closer is better. Better sand is better. And so it's important to know what those resources are for your program. We would love to have the renourishments on the same schedule, so we can reduce the mob cost. Every time you mobilize a dredge, it's a big hit on your program. And so if you can address as much of the island as you can in one mob event, that has long-term benefits to the program, and that will reduce the long-term cost. So those are my comments, a real high level, and I know there's a lot more in the memo that we attempted to address, and we're happy to talk about some of the questions and comments that the group has.
I've got several, but Could you do us a favor, and I think starting in page 25, and I think you've covered some of this in your presentation and your report. And by the way, for anybody that's listening or hasn't seen it, this is a report that has been long awaited to arrive, and it's a fantastic report, and I think provides us several very actionable items to pursue. But on page 25, you start going through specific recommendations. And again, you've hit several of them on your presentation, but could you just give us a quick bullet or two on each one of those so that we can all kind of understand what we are able to do in a very, I think it puts our stance from reactive to proactive. We've been in a reactive stance now for years, and we've been struggling to get into the proactive stance. I think these actions help us move towards that direction.
Yeah, so you kind of the bottom bullet points that I have on the next few pages here. Is that what you'd like me to summarize?
Yeah, it says summary of recommendations, and just, again, you've got a bunch in here that you didn't touch on in your slides, but I think they might be very easy ones for us to action on a little bit more quickly. The other thing, I think, in the messaging from the report, when I summarize it up, it tells me what we've been doing isn't keeping up with our loss period, and that in order for us to get in front of it, we're going to have to seriously explore and pursue retention structures or things of that nature, and they haven't been quite determined yet, and that we're going to have to pursue permits aggressively instead of waiting. I think one of your recommendations was 2 years after. You should be putting permits in within 2 years after your last beach renourishment. We haven't been doing that. We've been pursuing things in a very linear fashion. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll comment on that permitting.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump on the permit thing real quick. The state of South Carolina is they kind of have a rhythm in the regulatory groups. This is just kind of the way they do things and expect things. And we've struggled with that in the past with the town of Hilton Head Island, where we would say, hey, we want to get more proactive with our permits. We'd like to go ahead and get this started so we have them in place when we need them. Well, you don't have your problem yet. You don't have an identified problem right now. Why don't we just hold off till you have a problem? And we like your community, you have an evolving database where you can say, we don't have a problem right now, but we know it's coming. We need to be prepared for it. And it has been demonstrated in the past, and we've had some successes with that. So I think it's something to consider and having early conversations with the regulatory agencies is really important. Restoration, I'll just go through these real quick, starting on page 25. Future restoration and nourishment schedules. I think the point here is, yes, renourishment will continue to be needed. We need to look for more cost-effective ways to implement that. Reducing the amount of sand you need, reducing the cost of sand, or at least controlling the increase in cost of sand. There are things you have control over, things you don't have control over. What you have control over is identifying cost-effective sand sources near you if they are available, and what are those, where are those, and how much is available. What you don't have control over is the cost of dredging. There's a background increase in the dredging industry nationally that we can't control. We've had successes in being proactive in our bidding strategy with our schedule, how we structure bids, and making them more favorable to contractors to help control the price some. But with that said, the price continues to go up. So that should just be anticipated moving forward. So we want to reduce the sand loss rates, and we want to know where the sand is and try to get the best sand we can put on the beach. This proactive shoal management, I think I explored that in detail. This is something that is going to take work. It is going to take advancement of a concept to the study level. And also, I think advanced coordination with the regulatory agencies before you spend a bunch of time with the concept. Hey, let's go sit down with the regulatory agency, have a conversation with them, explain why this concept is here. Let's talk to the dredging industry. Is this even possible with the dredging equipment that's available to us as a tool? The idea is that it's unlike the scraping that moves very small amounts of sand. We can move large volumes of sand to be more beneficial. But we also need to look at, from an engineering perspective, would there be unintended adverse impacts to the shoal system, the island, and adjacent areas because of this? All that would need to be explored.
Chris, you mentioned in here about a maintenance style authorization, which eliminates the permitting process. Can you tell us about, I mean, we've gone through, we had to wait to go through the permitting process before we could do even any shoal management.
That's right. Yeah, and that's another knock on South Carolina. Florida used to operate in a similar manner. The state of Florida, about 10 or 15 years ago, they changed their process to issuing 15-year permits that might have multiple events within the permits, and went ahead and coordinated all that with the agencies, and that has reduced the administrative process on our side, on the community side, but also on the agency side. They don't release complete control to us along the way, but we don't have to completely start the process again. One of the big issues in South Carolina is we have to go back for formal consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife every time we do a project, and that takes a long time. I think we need to explore, this may be something that is brought to the attention of the Beach Advocates Group also, as an issue in the state of South Carolina, and put the beach advocates on it and spend time in Columbia if there need to be changes to state practices to allow this type of approach. And I think for a community like Isle of Palms, where you have to react very quickly, it's necessary, and it would be an important tool for you to have in your toolbox.
Hey, Chris, so is this option conceptual at this point? I mean, do you think we could get it across the line from a permitting or acceptability standpoint?
What, the shoal management?
Yep.
It's conceptual right now. I think we've done similar things that were really out of the norm. We relocated a big channel at Hilton Head Island one time that just people thought was the craziest idea ever, and it worked great. I think there's a chance. I think there's some details that need to be explored here. It might not look exactly the way I've sketched it up. The approach is sound. I've vetted it with a lot of people in my office here. I drew it and I sent it to a couple of people saying, am I completely crazy for proposing this? And I got a positive response. So yeah, I think it's something you definitely need to dig into deeper.
Is this the sand trap that you're talking about?
It's the sand trap, right?
Can you explain? Can you explain exactly what that is?
Yeah, I've described it. I'm struggling with how to describe this, and it really I've described it as a sand trap because the idea is we would go and we would excavate the shoal, and we would put that sand on the beach. And then as a future shoal migrates around, right before it forms, they tend to form in this area. It would basically just be refilling the hole we created last time.
So,
And then that sand would be available for a future event. And so it would go ahead. Is there a question?
Yes, sir. I have a question. Andrew Vega, as you described the sand trap, basically the idea is to dredge the sand, the shoal, put that sand on the beach and dredge it maybe a little bit deeper to then create the trap.
Maybe not even deeper, but this is what a shoal, just create kind of almost a flat area that's typically a shoal, so the next shoal can migrate into that.
Okay.
So there's
we may have some
additional
geotech conditions.
there's no structure. This isn't a structure, or
No, it's not a
Okay.
structure. It's a dredge area.
okay.
yeah, to just, for kind of the sake of example, we have always done shoal management projects with bulldozers and land-based equipment. We have then
That's right.
done the offshore projects with massive dredges. This would be
That's right.
a little bit of a hybrid of the two, where it would be a very shallow, as I understand it, would be a very shallow water-based dredge that would set up, instead of 2 miles offshore, would set up 400 feet offshore. So it's kind of between the two means we've been using previously. Is that
It
correct?
could be
Chris?
described as a bar. It could be described as a bar site. It's just a closer bar site that you're using. Right. It's kind of a hybrid, but yeah, And your sand scraping is really slow, death by 1,000 cuts. You're moving very small quantities of sand over a long period of time. The idea is get a dredge in there and with a high production rate and get it out of there. Put it on the beach and move on.
Okay.
I thought that word sand trap might cause some issues.
That's an
But
idea.
I can describe it differently and I can, obviously something that can be explored in more detail from even a graphical standpoint on what that might look like.
No, that makes sense now. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get back to the shore stabilizing structures. I feel like we up in reaches 5 and 6. I have shown them, and I'll share my screen as again, so I can kind of get back to that. So we're talking about things as we go through here. Yeah, so this is the sand trap again. This is the structures. Again, these are shown as detached breakwaters. I have drawn this to show the idea of putting structures of some form in the most problematic area. This would need to be more engineering work would need to go into this to determine where the structures are most beneficial, where they could be placed without negative impacts to adjacent areas. And how many and what size. So there would need to be a lot of work. This is simply a concept to show, hey, there has historically been problems in Reach 5 and Reach 6 where these areas can benefit from a structural application.
So
that's what I'm trying to demonstrate.
How far offshore would those be, and are they submerged? Are they, I mean,
Yeah, do you
go
have
ahead, Dave.
pictures or examples?
Yeah, so this is you can see here. Now this is a tidal flat, but they are emergent. You would see them, and they would be pretty close to shore. You want them close enough to shore so they actually have an influence on the waves and sand transport. And you can see right behind these structures are what's called a salient, or in even some instances a tombolo, where the sand reaches out and attaches to the structure. And that's because we're only letting wave energy through this small little gap. And what they're doing, you can almost think about, hey, with no structures, I have full wave energy along the shoreline here. I've reduced it by half by occupying half of the shoreline with a structure.
So is
So
this where
wait-
people would be swimming?
They can, but it would definitely, you can definitely place these in areas where people use the beach for sure. They exist all over the world in this manner here, but
Chris, what's the material? What are these made out of?
it's riprap. We like to use riprap, but it's larger, or like boulders, because they need to be stable, to the wave forces. Gosh, I wish I hadn't had it. You can kind of see it. Well, not really. Sorry, but they're riprap structures. If you've seen like a jetty or even a revetment that's made with riprap, it's the same type of construction material.
So Chris, if you could go back, just hide the photo that you just put over the other. So in that photo to the right, just to kind of help us visualize, when we have renourished Beechwood East, I would say that the shoreline at the time of renourishment, looks somewhat similar to the shoreline you have there in that right photo. But when
That's
it
right.
gets renourished, the edge of the shoreline goes out to, let's just say hypothetically, about where the break is between the tan and the green. So is that how you would envision this would work? That when we did a major renourishment, it would get completely covered and sand would be placed, 100 yards seaward of it. Over time, it would erode back to that structure and then start to appear and then become functional as the shoreline had gotten back to kind of, the area where it becomes exposed. So does it get exposed over time as we get close to the emergency condition, or how does that, just again, kind of knowing that the shoreline, depending on when we did the last renourishment, could be a football field out in front of those homes, or it could be, little to no shoreline in front of those homes. So where would it be?
Well,
The football field or the 30 feet off the houses?
Yeah, so ideally, I think this beach right here is about 150 feet wide behind it. I mean, so this is really big and scary. That's a condo right there. That's not an insignificant beach field there. And that out to the edge to the green in this photograph here, that's about 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet. It's a long way. This is a big tidal flat. So we traditionally like these structures to be built seaward of the beach field. And not completely buried between these renourishment events. You build them, you establish a line of defense, and that is essentially maintained, and you focus your nourishment practices on the adjacent areas. And ideally, you don't have to spend a lot of time with renourishment behind them, maybe occasionally, but you shouldn't see these large swings that you've traditionally seen, particularly where you're building the structure field. That's the whole point. And you can reduce the amount of sand that's placed in the lee of these structures. Now, you may increase the amount of sand that's needed on the adjacent side, but in the net, you're putting the structures in the most erosional area if you don't change the management of the shoal. And so, yeah, I wouldn't envision that you would have that type of effect where you would put something several hundred feet seaward of it and wait till it comes back. What we want to do is stop that from happening, or at least reduce those large swings in beach width that you've seen traditionally.
So is that like 100 yards long? Like the obviously it's a dotted line, but the line itself, is that 100 yards, 50 yards, 200 yards? I mean, obviously we haven't done enough to know exactly, but just ballpark.
Yeah, so these structures, these little yellow lines are about 100 feet long, the scale.
Okay.
These structures were about 100 feet long, each one of them. So using that for scale, that beach was 300 feet wide there.
But if you add
200
them all
feet.
together, that's maybe 1,000 feet then? All the.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Spaces in
That's
between.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Which is.
And this is just
roughly
one
3
example. This
football
is a
fields.
quick. I'm sorry.
Roughly 3 football fields. Trying to.
Yeah, this is just one example I pulled up. We've had a lot of success with these structures. Like I said, all over the world. We've used them on all kinds of beaches. And if anyone's interested, we could do a one-off meeting, and I could show you lots of other examples of these types of things. I just want to pull it up quickly for today's
Did you say
discussion.
you have those at Amelia Island also?
I'm sorry.
Did you say that
I forgot my headphones this morning, so I'm
Sorry.
listening to my computer speakers.
Did you say y'all have the breakwaters are at Amelia also?
There's one at Amelia that we used. Let's see. Let me go back to that picture. And I've highlighted it also here. There's a breakwater. That breakwater is about 300 feet long. It's a lot bigger because it's doing something a little different. We had two options here. One was to make this structure really long out to here and project back and make this wedge a lot bigger, or make the structure a little shorter and try to curve the shoreline a little more. But we needed this breakwater here, or the residual shoreline would still go into the maritime forest. So that breakwater is just pulling the shoreline out a little bit and making it tie in into the terminal groin there. Yeah. So yeah, that's what we did in Amelia. And this is all a state park here. This is accessible if anyone's ever down here and go out on the beach. You can actually drive around on the beach here.
Mr. Creed, you mentioned that there could be regulatory headwinds as far as like us trying to implement these kind of groins or breakwaters. What in South Carolina kind of be restrictive or prevent us from being able to do it?
The structures, I don't think you would have significant headwinds. Well, there'll be a process. We have implemented these types of structures on other areas in South Carolina. We've built a structure just like this on the north end of Hilton Head Island,
Okay.
And then built breakwaters in other areas. I think we would need to explore, and there's other examples in South Carolina that have been constructed by others. We would just need to explore. I think with anything, it doesn't cost a lot of money to go have conversations with the resource agencies. Assemble, go to their, maybe develop a plan a little further, go to an interagency meeting, present the concepts to them, see what the reaction is. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is always kind of a struggle to get past. We have maybe some sea turtle nesting issues around some of the structures, but I believe that all that's manageable.
Chris, do you have an opinion on and I think the city has been advised that the statute requires that the area be determined to be critically erosional. And I think we've been advised that the northern end certainly would meet that criteria with as much as we've done. But there's been a question about the south end, and the idea that it's never been fully renourished, that there hasn't been kind of the first steps taken, and that structures may be deemed kind of a fallback position once the other things fail. Do you have any opinions on how that would be perceived, and if that's an accurate portrayal of, I mean, would that be your understanding? If there's never been a large-scale renourishment on that end, would the agencies say, try that first? Or do you know?
I've always had an experience of going through the process of demonstrating need. And we did this on Hilton Head on the north end. We had erosion rates that were in excess of 150 feet per year. And we went to the agencies like, there's no way. I mean, we just did a simple math. A beach nourishment project is not going to work when you try to build it in an environment that you have rates that high. You just can't place enough sand, and it just seems like a waste of resources to do so. So we were able to get through the regulatory process with a very, very significant structure on the north end. I'm not using it as an example here because it's a little different shoreline configuration, but there is an example in the state of South Carolina where we've done it. And we did not have to prove that. We didn't have to go build a beach nourishment project and watch it fail before we proved our point. I think with an appropriate study, I mean, these erosion rates are super high on the south end of the island. Particularly, we've seen, Evan, I think we've seen a recent acceleration of that, particularly in Reach 1. And I think you have a pretty strong case. It would be interesting. I just don't see how a resource agency could say, hey, well, we don't really believe you. Go build a project and let's see if it works.
Hey, Chris,
I don't.
your data supported, and this is, I think, a little bit of a news for us, is that, we've been talking about this accelerated erosional cycle for the past 2-3 years. And I think, Douglas, to your point, we've been kind of hearing that, well, that's not long enough or a case enough. But your report is talking about a documented, data-driven conclusion that says we've been losing since 2010, 2011, and there could be many reasons why. So to me, that seems like it's not an acute situation, it's a chronic situation.
That's right. I agree with that.
So that brings me to, and maybe this is just I don't know, I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole on this one a little too much, but the fact that the south end has been accretional since as long as anyone's been keeping track, and now in 2010 it changed. And I have asked our current firm that's been working with us, I asked another group that came and talked to us, and now you've given us this picture. And basically, and I'm certainly, this is not meant to be a criticism, because I know that you only have the data that you were given, and this is kind of just a possible reason. But the other firm that we talked to mentioned that it could be a possibility that, I guess, inlets naturally have a wag back and forth, and possibly the structures on Sullivan's side have kind of stopped that wag. And then you've mentioned this picture that we're looking at right now, and maybe it was just kind of a perfect storms event. But to me, if something changes, and 2010 wasn't that long ago in the serious scope of, geological changes, it's very short. So I'm trying to understand why that happened. And to me, that's important because to me, it makes a big difference as to what we do next if we know the why. Because if what you're saying is the problem, is there some sort of solution that we could go to address that back in the intercoastal? If it's the potential WAG situation, then obviously we can't do anything about the the rocks on Sullivan's, but to me that then lends more to the idea of having structures on our beach. So sorry, that was a lot of information, but I'm
No, I know where you're going.
really-
I've got a comment for you.
Okay.
I've got a comment for you.
You have an answer, right?
I don't disagree with inlet dynamics. Inlets are very dynamic things. And before we showed up and started building hard infrastructure on all these barrier islands throughout the country, they just did their thing. The problem now is we've got hard lines of development that we're trying to protect, and we can't tolerate the natural dynamics of these inlets anymore. This magnitude of some of these changes that occur naturally interfere with our development. And so you have to make engineering decisions to protect that. I mean, I've made a career out of this. You have to make engineering decisions and financial decisions to protect your infrastructure. And you may influence how those inlets behave to protect yourself. And so, yeah, the decisions have to be made. I mean, can there be other things to avoid putting a terminal going on the end of this island? Maybe. We really didn't have a lot of time to explore some of those other options. And quite frankly, I think that the level of study that would be required to explore some of that would be a lot more extensive, obviously, than what we have access to right now. A hydrodynamic model of the inlet system that looks at the past condition of the channels and inlet, the current condition of the channel and inlet, and look at it numerically and look at it, the physics of what's going on here. Then you could explore, hey, let's go build a wall along the intercoastal waterway and stop flow or reduce the flow in and out of Breach Inlet, and maybe it'll go back to the way it was. Honestly, if I had a criticism of some of the past things that were written by your consultant, and I shared this with Douglas one day, I felt like some of the comments were too optimistic, that things were just going to simply return back to the way they were. And from our review, and it's not a criticism of their work. I think they did a fine work looking at data. It just seemed a little overly optimistic to say, let's just give this a little more time. It might return back to the way it was.
Well,
We
I
don't see
think-
that.
But one thing, though, to that, and I think kind of to my issue too, is going back to if we were to go to the state, these are things that they're going to say. The state is
Yeah,
going to say this
that could
just
be.
happened. It's been accretional for 600 years. Why isn't
could
why,
be.
why do you think it's not? So like the hydrodynamic study, I mean, what would it take to do that? I mean,
Right, that might
what
be
does that
something they
study
throw back
take?
at you.
What's that?
Yeah.
Like what the hydrodynamic study, how long does that take? What are we talking about in that?
Yeah, we always try to avoid numerical models because they're time consuming and expensive. But sometimes they're necessary when you have a really complicated problem. It's hard for me to guess right now what it would be. You don't look just at the inlet; you have to kind of look at the region. But it's not impossible. I mean, we've got like 3 underway right now for other clients. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if you got into the regulatory setting with a really, a pretty strong proposal for significant changes, you might be faced with that. But these are, we're trying to advise you on what your options are. The option of, hey, let's go build a beach nourishment project and see what happens is an option for the community. If you're really not ready to explore more permanent solutions. I will, the optimism with the intercoastal waterway, I think I'm pretty clear in the memo. Very, very suspicious about the quality of that material and what the net benefit to you is going to be. I don't think you're going to be satisfied in the long term with that. In the future, though, it's not an opportunity I would pass by, particularly if it's free. as long as it doesn't have a detrimental impact to your beach, like starts putting muds and clays and other unsuitable material on your beach that make beach use, not fun. So that's something to be mindful of as you have those future opportunities.
So Chris, to go back to go back to the question from Katie, I mean, if you're saying we probably shouldn't pursue the numerical study, might be too complicated, too expensive, what can we do to sort of either justify or quantify one way or the other what would be the best solution for the south end and even potentially the north end of the island? Because we've got to do something. We're faced with this nourishment project that is escalating in cost, and hopefully we get a chance to talk about that for a minute. But it sounds to me like for us to put any amount of money on the beach, the way we're doing it is just going to, you're recommending shorter cycles, the wave action's increasing, sea level's rising. Are we just wasting a bunch of money without some kind of alternative or retention structures? I guess we need.
Right. Beach management is a repetitive cost, right? It's something you're going to have to continue. I think you have a current need now. You need to put sand on the beach. You probably don't need to delay that. I just think your expectations for the performance of that project need to be kind of in line with what you've seen in the past, because you're not changing anything, right? You're not influencing the forces that are affecting your beach. So we could probably still see the just detrimental effects due to future shoal migrations, sand loss on the south end. Might continue to be at those rates that we've seen recently because we haven't corrected what's contributed to the change. So, but I'm not sure I'd discourage you from staying your current path. And I think some of these other things really are for implementation in future projects.
So it's basically parallel, do the nourishment, but get these other mitigations in place at the same time?
I think so. That would be my recommendation. That's right.
Tim, do you have a question?
I did. In your study, you said the dredging of the intercoastal waterway was a contributor to the problems at Breach Inlet with the channel changes and channels getting deeper. Is that a problem, or that the Army Corps of Engineers believes it's there? Because
I said it might. I said it might be. I don't want to get in trouble with the Corps right immediately with accusing them of something.
But if that's
Well,
the
and they have a mandate. Yeah, they have a mandate to maintain that channel, but dredging has consequences, and you're potentially destabilizing the slope of the adjacent shorelines. It could be contributed to just the use of the intercoastal waterway by vessel traffic, loss of that little headland there, making that a more efficient conduit for flow. It could be a combination of a lot of things that have contributed to that. Just the presence of the intercoastal waterway there, and that area is the area that has to be maintained more often, because some of the sand lost from the beach is ending up in the intercoastal. That's basically where the the flood shoal of Breach Inlet wants to reside, and they keep dredging it away, and they putting it into the containment areas, and so it is having an effect. And I think there's a cause and effect to what we've seen in these marsh changes here to those practices and the use of the intercoastal. The question is really, how much has that change influenced what we're seeing happen out on the beach? It's suspicious to me. I think it's something that should be explored further if we can't find another solution to what's going on the south end of the island.
And the other thing is,
Did that help? Did that help?
Sure, but it seems like this project's going to take a while, and we've got problems now. Is there anything we can do in the immediate future that can solve this, whether it be terminal growings or anything that a property owner can do in conjunction, I guess, with state and feds to protect their property? In the meantime, working on getting the renourishment or growing built or a leaky growing, something that we can do now to hold off some of this erosion.
One thing I didn't really know much about. Where are you in the planning process for the next project? You're doing, I think there's a sand search going on right now. What's the
Yes.
schedule for that next renourishment?
So the permits for the renourishment were submitted just recently.
Okay.
We're anticipating, and it's, budgeted to happen basically a year from now, the project
Okay.
itself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the
permits are
things,
underway.
any of these things that I'm talking about in this proposal are not a year away. These will take time. There needs to be more study, and there needs to be a plan, and I think there needs to be more study, plan selection, coordination with the agencies. It's one of those things where you need to possibly implement some. Now, the shoal management could be probably a standalone project. You wouldn't use the same type of dredging equipment you're going to build the next renourishment project with a shoal management project. That's standalone. The structures really need to be implemented with the next renourishment project. So that might be years away, or you can do it one at a time. You prioritize. If you feel like you're managing the shoal in the north end, you kind of got that solved for a while. You don't want to do the shoal and the breakwaters. I kind of present it as one or the other. You could do both. But you could possibly do one or the other. I would probably recommend exploring shoal management over structures as the first step on the north end. See if we can kind of eliminate the problem versus fighting the problem. And the fighting the problem is with the structures. Eliminating the problem is better shoal management. On the south end, build your project. Really. Follow your monitoring program. Really look at what's happening there, and if it's not satisfactory, really start exploring protection there more aggressively. And that can be implemented maybe halfway through the next project's performance. It really just kind of depends on when it's going to be, how it's going to perform.
Hey, Chris,
And to the point made, we don't know yet. It's never been built down there. I don't think I'd make a recommendation to stop if you have sand placement plan for down there.
Chris, good information. The studies and everything. I guess here's where I am. We've been at this beach ad hoc committee for, it's a year and a half or whatever. And I think what I'm hearing you say is, a year and a half ago, it'd be great if we knew this and could have implemented some of those studies so that we would have the output and be able to make recommendations to go forward. And these studies that you've talked about, how can we, behind that water's under the bridge, how can we get that, or how would you recommend we get that process going now? And the studies that, maybe we need to talk to you more about, hey, which studies are you talking about? How long do they take? How much do they cost, et cetera, et cetera. But for us to stand still any longer, I think is going to be detrimental to not only the long-term health of the beach, but it's going to severely impact the next renourishment project if we don't do something differently. I think what I'm hearing from you
That's
is
right.
we got to do the one we've got, but if we don't prepare for the next one and start doing something to protect that shoreline, we're just going to be in the same place 8 years from now and dropping more sand on the beach.
That's right. I agree with that. And I also agree, prioritizing, the committee needs to make some decisions. Hey, what piece of this do you want to explore further? Right? Do you want to spend time, and you can do it in phases. You can talk about initial concepts with the agencies before you go spend a bunch of time with it and help you make decisions. Spend time with the dredging industry, maybe a smaller desktop study with the shoal management. Hey, if this is something we were going to look at, let's look at it more than just Chris Creek drawing a box. Let's really look at some of the details of what this looks like. Of what the practicalities of it, is our dredging equipment suitable for doing the work? Can it be done? Can we get permits to do it? Obviously, I think if we can do it, it will work. It will help. It won't completely eliminate it. And you can start pursuing that thing, and it could extend the longevity of the project you have on the books right now. And then you could focus on the south end of the island.
Could you, we sidetracked you. Can you walk through the rest of those recommendations, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. So really focusing on the shoal management and the structures, terminal groying. Obviously, we've tapped on that. Sand source identification and preservation. I spend time on this in the report because this is something I do with a lot of clients. We work throughout the Southeast U.S. Southeast Florida is one of our principal areas of practice where they're completely out of sand. And I've seen how that has affected these beach programs over time. Principally, where does the sand come from and how much does it cost? Identifying those sand sources and preserving them. I spend time talking about the idea of how do you manage these when a dredging contractor starts using them. We have a really well-established program for the town of Hilton Head Island where we really take care of these sand sources to make them usable in subsequent projects. And that's unfortunately from lessons learned and past bad behavior from the dredging industry. So those are some practices there. Establish this minimum healthy beach volume. I like the idea that you're tracking beach volume as a management goal. These measures that we're proposing do exactly that. They try to help you not exceed this minimum condition that you've had. You're right now living with periods of time when you don't have the sand in place that you want to have there to meet your goal. And so these practices that we're saying to implement would seek to improve that and keep you from losing material beyond that minimum requirement.
So Chris.
Triggers also, go ahead.
Chris, just to kind of level set, I think that these, you've just triggered into a reaction to the ad hoc committee's request of you to review their goals. So I think the first few were things that were outside of what was asked for, but that first one, just for the benefit of this group, we're now going into goals that you all had in your report and have asked for them to opine on. So that's kind of where we are. Sorry, Chris,
you're
go ahead.
right. No, that's okay. Yeah, I would like to clarify that too, right? So I had our recommendations, which we've reviewed in our proposal. I read the ad hoc committee's matrix, and I just felt like I had something to say. So I just wanted to touch
Well,
on.
and we told you had to say it too, just for the record.
Yeah, I thought these were good. These were good things to talk about as a community, and bring these issues up. Lots of, as I said earlier, lots of these communities have similar goals. We talked about the minimum healthy beach condition, and that really is what our proposals are intended to do. Triggers are the other thing. I know you guys have struggled with this before. Being more proactive helps manage those triggers. You want to be in charge and not have to react to this and look for ways to understand the physical system you're living in and how can we protect ourselves from it in a proactive way. And that would eliminate these triggers. You want to be in control. Like for Hilton Head, in 2016, we knew we were going to the next project in 2025. We said, that's our goal. We're going to do it in 2025. And we designed the past project to perform in such a way that we would get to that goal, and it's exactly where we are. Fortunately, what we've seen over time is the beach, for that particular community, areas of the beach have matured over time and are starting to perform better, and we're having to focus our efforts on the dynamic ends of the island near these inlets. We're seeing kind of the central portions of the island are kind of getting under control, and we're spending a lot more time on the ends. I spent some time on this the Corps of Engineers managed beach question. I probably gave you way more than you wanted, but I did. This is, and some of these notes, and I won't go through them all unless you would like for me to, are from an existing inventory of things that we have assembled over the years to help lots of our clients who have faced the same question you're facing now with the managed beach. There are, as I think you can glean from my comments, there are pros and cons with that.
Yeah, and Chris,
There's no guarantee.
Yeah, we've talked to the Army Corps and a couple of local municipalities that are covered or are trying to get covered. So, I mean, I think this group has a pretty good handle on, I mean, I appreciate your opinions because they're right in line with, I think, where most of us are, and, starting with the easements primarily. So,
Right.
Yeah, I think we're right where you are on that one.
Okay. As to this repeal of the 250-foot mean high water line, or modify it, I think my point here is until you get some of this under control, you probably want to continue to allow people to protect themselves. It's obviously not a long-term practice you want to encourage. And some of the stuff can be detrimental. We've always kind of deferred to types of structures that can be removed, but not something we want to harden the whole shoreline. Really, ideally, you want to develop a management practice that's reestablished and maintains the beach well away from where your development line is. And really, not that it's specifically mentioned here, but this came up yesterday with another, up at the village of Bald Head Island, and the town of Hilton Head has dealt with it too, where because they've been so successful with their beach management program, there are now development interests that want to advance the line of development. That's something maybe long-term you would want to look at once we get all this stuff under control.
So, Chris, on that one, and this is one that the committee spent a lot of time on, so currently the ordinance allows only larger sandbags as a and that's clearly a temporary solution. There was a time when council temporarily allowed a more hardened structure like seawalls, revetments. That since went away. So we're kind of back to being at the original ordinance of really not allowing anything other than large sandbags. Are you suggesting something between the two? And if so, could you give an example of what that might be? Would that be like larger geotubes, or what is temporary? Is there something that kind of meets your definition of temporary but does better than what our current ordinance allows, which is sandbags?
Yeah, how large are the sandbags?
1 cubic yard.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's South.
Yeah,
No, that's in
That's
ours.
ours.
That's in ours too.
more toward the geotube approach that you mentioned. We've had success with that in bridging the gap, and they're more stable. They can protect a much larger area of the shoreline, and they don't get transported away. Even a 1 cubic yard sandbag if it starts tearing apart can you'll have litter and debris and things like that that'll get displaced from the application. We like using the larger geotubes or larger tubes as temporary structures. There's always pressure, even if you come in with a beach nourishment project, to leave them buried. I think that's a good decision you're going to have to make at the time when you face it, of when will the agency let you do that, and it's something that you would want to do. But yeah, I'm not talking about any type of more hard structure like sheet pile walls or engineered walls or things like that. I would defer more to the tubes, with the understanding that a beach nourishment project is coming. This is not a long-term thing. It just keeps these people from losing their house while you're in this process.
But Chris, the early conversations with state agencies here, I think there's willingness to approve a geotube, but just on a trial basis. That's not something allowed right now.
Well, but this question that he's responding to is outside of the state's jurisdiction, but
Got it.
in our additional 250 feet.
Got it.
So,
We might have some leeway.
We might have.
right,
yeah.
this would be, this is outside of the
Got it.
state's area.
Have you seen other places that have this 250-foot restriction?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Definitely, we have seen, there was an example in Amelia Island, with that example I showed you earlier on Amelia. This was, right, see all this development right here on the south end of the island? This is Amelia Island Plantation. There was 10,000 feet of geotube. This is back in the early 90s when the south end of the island was completely coming unraveled here, and all these structures were threatened. And there was a geotube, and we started putting the beach nourishment project together, and the plan, we put geotubes, 10,000 feet of them along this entire shoreline here to protect this development until the project went in. We built the first project in 94. We built the second project like 5 years later. And then this was with the third project. After two failures, we did this, we added the structures. But yeah, that community didn't, and it wasn't deliberate at the time. They found that the projects weren't working. And so that's when they started pursuing these structures.
Has the
Getting back to-
technology improved with the geotubes since then?
Well, it's really, the technology is about the same. What you'll find is the vendors kind of come and go and who makes them, and particularly the durable ones. We still use them occasionally, and there are some vendors out there that make some pretty nice tubes that have some, they last about 5 years, even with the coatings and stuff. They're not a forever structure. They do that. There was a lot of them used in Ponte Vedra in North Florida after Hurricane Matthew, for the same reason. There's been a beach transfer project built now, but people were losing their houses and their properties, and were still trying to assemble and figure out where the money was going to come from, going through the regulatory process, but it was permitted as a line of defense to bridge that gap. We may have some photographs of that if, Evan, if we want to track those, ask Al and Sergio if they have those Ponte Vedra pictures before the project. Yeah, this is I only make my comment when we get down to the next one. This is kind of the emergency work and who's responsible, community versus owner. I've seen it most successful. I've seen programs most successful when they're approached in a comprehensive manner, in a community-led effort. That doesn't mean that the community has, that maybe the owners pay the city to participate in a program, but addressing these problems as a whole, rather than a piecemeal basis, has proven to be a more successful approach to beach management. I think I'm pretty clear with the construction of pools. That is from personal experience on Hilton Head, where once those pools are in, that's just like their habitable structure. I think you guys have already addressed that as a community. I'll comment here, and just so you put it in perspective of what my comment means. An acceleration of frequency of dredging projects will have a cost impact to you long term. Because if you look at the cost timeline, you are inserting the mode cost of the dredge more frequently in your economic analysis. And that is that's right. That's a fixed cost that's escalating through time. And so what you'll find is, to make a program more cost effective over the long term, reduce the average annual cost of a longer term program, you want to increase the time between dredging events and not decrease it. But if you need projects more frequently, obviously you just have to pay for that. But I just wanted to point out that that's why that's an effect in the decision making of increasing the frequency.
Can I ask you a quick question? I think you said you're doing the Hilton Head project.
Yes.
So when I looked at that, the cost, I think in your report also, you talk about the increasing of the escalating costs, which is really not a good thing for any of us. But
Right.
I think it landed at about 48 million for 2.2 million cubic yards of sand, which I think was about, I think your metric is $22 per cubic yard, roughly, or in that neighborhood.
Yeah, it's actually 38 million. The 48 million, we're building some more breakwaters somewhere. And I think that includes, that's their all-in cost for the entire program,
Yep.
including all of our past work. So the dredging cost, just so you guys can do that, was about, and that was, we had 4 dredgers. We had 4 bidders, which we thought was fantastic. And 3 of them were really competitive bids. And it came out right around 38 million.
Okay. So we're roughly, I think, in the 17 range. I think it's 5 for mobilization, and the assumptions come up from $10 to $15 per cubic yard of sand. Does that sound in the ballpark, you think?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
That you probably got that from a pretty competitive bid environment.
I don't think we've gone for bid. These are sort of, I think, more
Oh, okay.
more discussionary. Would you, and on the bidding process, can you talk a little bit about how you do that? Because we've seen, by the way, we don't have the 15 in our budget. We've got, I think, $12.50 in our budget per cubic yard of sand. But how would you recommend we go about that bidding process, knowing that we've got the project on the docket for 15, 18 months from now?
You need to go ahead and let the dredging industry know where you are. You need to let them know. And if you haven't already done that, we will send advance notices to the dredge. There's 4 companies you're going to send it to. You're going to send it to Great Lakes, Weeks, Merrinex, and Norfolk. And just let those folks know they're out there. And the other thing is in the design process of making sure as the contract conditions are as favorable as they can be, to let them be creative in how they build your project while still meeting your objectives. That I guess that another way to say it is don't put unnecessary constraints in your contract that would make them assess risk differently. I've been told anecdotally, I'll give you a quick story, what I've been told how dredging contractors bid projects. They send it down to their cost estimators in the basement, and they come up with what it actually cost. They said, here's all the nuts and bolts to move a dredge there and to build a project. Then they take that package up to the boardroom, and they bring in their risk people, and they start discussing what are the risks. So contract risk, weather risk, seasonal risk, and market risk. What's everybody else doing in the market? And they decide as a group how much they're going to escalate the base cost, and that's how they do it. So you need to think like a dredger in terms of managing your risk in your contract documents.
And is that something you all can help us with?
Yeah, we could definitely look at it for sure.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, nice thing with FOATH, I was mentioning earlier, with FOATH, Infrastructure Environment, and being integrated into this Ports and Harbors group, there's about 5 people sitting in Newport, Rhode Island, who used to work for Great Lakes, Weeks, Manson, and I think there's in Cashman. So we have access to these people who used to do cost estimating for these dredging companies. And so we do internal peer reviews now with our dredging contract. So that's a super valuable resource.
Right.
Chris, have you just with your experience in Hilton Head, one of the things that's been identified to us that we always specify it happens in the winter, and
That's right.
do you all and so we've put them in a pretty tight performance time frame. Did you do the same in Hilton Head, or do you give them more flexibility to do it in the summer, knowing kind of the cost benefit could be there?
Well, I'll give you a little more background on that for the town. As like I said, I came to work for Eric Olson 2 years after they finished the first project at Hilton Head. And the first project at Hilton Head was built in 1990, and I wrote the first monitoring report, and then I was the engineer for the 1997 project. The 1990 project and the 1997 project were built in the summertime. When they went to the next project that was built in 2006, during that time frame, 2 things happened to us. We were victims of our own success with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, where we didn't have turtle nesting in the past. Now we did, because we had good beach conditions everywhere. The second thing was the beach became a lot more popular, and there was a lot more development, and there was a lot more beach use in the summertime. So the town assembled a team like this and had a discussion about, are we going to be a summertime project or are we going to be a wintertime project? And they made the decision to transition everything to the wintertime, and it doubled the cost of doing business. We did an economic study for them on dredge cost. Their first project cost $8 million. The second project was about 10. The third one, when they went to wintertime, was $20 million. And so they saw an immediate, and the way the dredging industry looks at this is like they are a production-based business. They have X number of yards to move. How many work days do I have available to me in the summertime? How many work days do I have available to me in the wintertime? And they say, okay, it's going to take me twice as long to place the same amount of sand in the wintertime as it was in the summertime. It'll double the cost. And there's safety issues, and there's all those other things that go along with that. But that's how they look at it. So ways we have attempted to manage that is to try to work on the shoulder seasons if we can. We're working around, the town has given us a strict prohibition that the use density is so high now at Hilton Head there's no way we could build a project there in the summertime. But there are areas we can work where the use is less, and we can kind of focus on those areas. And we've been able to work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with nest relocation and other management practices to work in nesting season, which has helped us manage that cost some. But we also try to give as much time as we can to them, to the dredging, and let them, kind of getting back to my point of letting them figure out the problem. Don't overly constrain the problem unless it's absolutely necessary from a local community need or a regulatory need.
Good advice.
I have, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have one more question about the, going back up to the north end and the breakwaters. You mentioned
Okay.
earlier that you might have to add more sand on either side of them. What kind of results do you have with the breakwaters and downdrift? Is it different from jetties or, not jetties, sorry, groins? Thank you. What, is there a difference there?
Yeah, they retain sand, but so these adjacent areas, as has been identified through your monitoring, do benefit from sand loss from these areas when it just ripped out of here when these shell attachment events. So there's benefits on the adjacent side. So that will be influenced by the breakwaters. It's like but I'm moving the erosion problem away from a highly erosional area to an area that's not as erosional. And so you can show that even though I might induce some erosional stress here because I'm cutting off the sand supply, it's in an area where the wave forces or the forces that contribute to erosion are less. And so that's getting back to my strategic comment. There are ways to manage that so that you can look at the system in a whole. If I implement these breakwaters, can I reduce the amount of sand it takes to manage the entire area?
So
I don't know if that
you're
answered
not
your question.
So you're not seeing the situation with, like, some beaches where, you end up with groins every 100, 200 yards. I mean, that's,
No, I would not anticipate that here. No. I mean, my approach would be, my recommendation would be is let's focus on these areas that have the most significant problem. You can see where the development is most close to the edge, where it has traditionally been problematic when we have these events, and try to solve that, and then work with your nourishment program around these areas that are not as erosional.
Hey, Chris, I have one more, just kind of a framework question. So we've heard a lot, the report's fantastic and a lot to digest, but, we've been, I think, kind of struggling as a committee, and we're not coastal engineers by any stretch, but how would we, I guess one of the things I would be interested in is how could we get a documented, crisp, 4 or 5 page plan of, hey, this is what we could do or what we should do and pursue study-wise, evaluation-wise, regulatory-wise, cost-wise, deployment-wise over the next 2 years, concurrent with our beach renourishment that's on the horizon. That's a schedule and a very cadenced plan on what we could pursue. Of course, we'd have to go along with the cost of each one of those items, but if you were to recommend our path forward for the next, say, 2 years through this next beach renourishment, is that something you all could produce for us?
Sure. We could produce our version of it.
Sure. Pardon me?
His version.
We could produce our version of it. We could give you, we would give you kind of some things to think about.
Well, right now, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of the committee members, but I feel like we're drifting and we're not proactive, and we've got to get a very structured, proactive program in place over the next several years and going forward with all the changes that we have and get to the root cause of what's causing it. And we can't keep pouring $30 million on the beach and just having it wash away.
That's right. Well, and I appreciate that my report, although, I feel like it's very comprehensive, it doesn't give you immediate satisfaction, right? It doesn't, it was intended to really to kind of give that second opinion of what, looking at the program, it was a lot to digest, and we really tried to focus on what we thought would be the most useful things for you to just to think about, be aware of, and think about what some of your options are moving forward, and what those, in deciding on pursuing any of those, what that might mean to you
Well,
is
we haven't
really.
had this kind of a product produced for us, and I think this is a big step forward, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think, oh, go ahead, Douglas.
Well, I guess, and I've had this kind of question as we've been bouncing around a little bit, and I wanted to, and it may be too kind of nuts and bolts-ish for this meeting, but Chris, and I think we've talked about the fact that in our current budget right now, there is design money for groin designs. And the kind of path that we have been loosely on is get the major renourishment permit request in, get that, kind of going through the year of lead time that it needs, focus on that now. And then really at this point, talk about, with the idea of potentially getting permits for groins and when we put it in the budget, it was contemplated for the north end, with the idea that the two permit applications would be separate, but that potentially they both could be issued around the same time as, be in place for the project a year from now.
Yep.
And it sounded from what you said earlier, that it may be too rushed, I guess, to try to do that, to try to do groins a year from now.
Well, I didn't realize you had a permit in. I guess I've missed that part of where you were in the process, that you've actually got a design of a groin field that's
No.
ready to.
No, so just to clarify, we have just submitted the design for the renourishment project, but we
Okay,
have
okay.
in our budget for right now, design work, and it's kind of a placeholder, but design work for groins to happen now. But the idea of doing that would be that all of that would be coming together, potentially, if the permitting worked out, to potentially be in place when the renourishment happened a year from now. That we would have two different permits, but not being able to forecast what the, would a groin be appealed? Would we be able to actually construct it at the same time? We didn't know that, obviously, and we still don't know that. The other kind of thing that's come up is, while the placeholder in the budget is for north end groins, the city's become aware of the private homeowners in that area pursuing a pilot program for geotubes. So that has then kind of pushed the conversation internally to then pursuing potentially a groin at the south end with the money that's in the budget, with the idea that this geotube project could take place with the property owners on the north end. So I guess all of that to say, I think our roadmap had us applying for things potentially in the very near future. And do you think I think you said earlier that it might just be that we don't do that for this renourishment and aim on the future renourishment. Do you have an opinion on that? It's a lot to kind of unwind on you at once, but that's
I'm trying to collect my thoughts here on that, not knowing that there was already kind of an idea that we would pursue structures up here. I really would like you to spend some time on this shoal management strategy a little bit, but that's pretty cheap. I mean, you could, I don't know if I have an immediate opinion on that, but because it kind of the way we outline, our approach is, and this was an internal discussion we had here too, because I had a version of on the north end of both things being constructed at the same time, the breakwaters and the sand trap or the shoal management strategy. And the internal consensus is to remove that. Is don't say they have to be done together as an option. It was almost an either or. They can be, and I think I put that in the text, but I didn't draw the picture. if you're deferring to groins on the north end, are you giving up? Are you just saying, hey, we're faced with this erosion that happens every few years when these shoals come ashore, and we're going to build a wall of defense through groins to protect ourselves from that? And you're kind of selected that approach as, yeah. So you could repurpose that if the shoal management thing were to work out and it was consensus built that it was something that can be constructed and managed correctly, and it works, then you could put the breakwaters or groins in the north off for several years.
Yeah,
I'm
Chris,
not sure you get an answer today. That's something you might need to work on a little bit more.
yeah, Chris, because it sounded like breakwaters, groins, whatever you wind up doing, I mean, there's more
That's right.
study that needs to happen before you pick a path. I mean, I think we just have a placeholder in our budget for some type of hard structure, but
I think that's right. I mean, I think you need to be really careful with groins or breakwaters there on the north end, what the scope and scale and location of those things are. I think there needs to be more work done on that.
So,
What is the anticipated success of those?
so to
Under the
dovetail-
most extreme erosional stress that we've seen in your historical record.
So now, to kind of, if you were aware that the property owners in that area were pursuing geotubes, and as I understand it, it would be a series of geotubes right up against their structures, kind of independently of the city's renourishment, would that be the path to support that effort that they have underway, do the renourishment project, and in the meantime, kind of work on potentially shoal management? If that doesn't work, go to the breakwaters and groins?
Yeah, I think so. Because you're protecting them, right? You're acknowledging that you haven't solved the problem yet, and so the tubes are going to go in, but you are going to put more sand in the system. And gosh, ideally, you would try to get ahead of the next shoal event to prevent it from impacting that sand that you're about to place up there.
so I think,
Seeing how that shoal I really think there's a good chance of some good. If that's something that can actually be built, permitted and built, which permitting I think is one thing, building is another. It needs to be explored further. I think it has a great chance to have a positive influence.
The sand
the
trap?
sand trap,
trap.
yeah.
Yeah, sand management, sand trap, shoal management idea. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, it's been tagged now. We can't call it anything else. It's a sand trap.
yeah. I shouldn't have let it go. I should have thought about it a little more.
Yeah, so I wonder, I thinking about next steps, Chris, from this committee standpoint, a lot of great information. Again, to Scott's point, I think your report was very well written. I think we need to I would suggest we pull this group back together again one more time because we have a new full-time committee happening 1st of January.
Well, let's talk about that if we
Yeah,
can.
let me just finish that. And so I think, I think it would be beneficial to have our current coastal engineer come in and opine back on some of this stuff. Talk
Sure.
about, he's obviously very familiar, like you guys are, with what's permittable in South Carolina and what's allowable. Feels like that's kind of a logical next step to me, but that's just
Yeah. Have they seen this?
say it again.
Have they seen this yet?
I don't know that they've read it. It's been sent to them.
Okay. Well, I haven't received a phone call, so I don't know if they.
Yeah, I think it's all kind of recently gone out.
Yeah, and I guess
Okay.
where I am, just my initial reaction, and having read your report multiple times now, is, we've got a coastal engineering firm here that does certain things and has certain skill sets, but I think we as a committee ought to really think hard about augmenting that with a firm that has the heft and the engineering depth that you all have to get this program moving in a direction that might get us some results a little bit quicker.
Yeah, we'll be happy to help in any capacity. So just let us know. I mean, I think I am interested to see what their response is to this. I've had previous conversations with them about the problems here in the past, and we were very fortunate to get the opportunity to dig in deeper And so, yeah, happy to help in any way we can.
I've got a quick question. Do you have any insight on how they financed all this, the cities and the towns, beaches?
Good question.
For Isle of Palm or for
For your past projects, like maybe Hilton Head and Amelia, how did they finance it? And how did they create a stable financing source to renourish to have it on schedule for every 8 to 10 years or however they decided to do it?
Right. That's a really good question. And, Hilton Head Island has several things going for them. They were not incorporated until 1983 as a town. And they started their beach management work in 1985. And by 1992, they had 92 or 94, they had established a 2% accommodations tax on short-term rentals that was exclusively to be used for their beach management program. Their early, decision makers saw it as a priority and were proactive and established that fee. And as the success of the program has grown through time, so has their ability to collect revenue because of the use of their beaches. There's just development density's increased, the use of the island has increased, and they collect money. They've been able to do that almost exclusively with that fee up until this point. We do talk about sustainability with that community as well, understanding there is an increase in cost. Is the money available to them still going to be sufficient to serve them in the future? And it's a question that we're working with them on right now. They've had a little bit of state input over the years, but it was pretty minimal and no federal input. And so they've been fortunate. The other thing that they've done is we've helped them conserve those sand sources that are closest to them, which has helped control the cost of their projects. And so that's why I keep harping on this sand source thing. There are two things that really will affect the success of the program is your ability to raise the money and your ability to control cost. And access to your sand sources is a really important piece of that. And so that's how Hilton Head has done it, but they are fairly unique. I think they have the fee started, but they also have a really deep bench of people they can tax to get that money. Other communities with like these larger barrier islands, even like Isle of Palms, you got really deep density. You got a lot of people here. Amelia Island on the south end, for example, is another one where they have what they call an MSBU, a Municipal Services Benefits Unit, and they tax themselves on the south end of the island and have paid with some state cost sharing in Florida. But they, every time they have a project come up or when they need funding, they'll go out and pass the hat through that MSBU to the local homeowners. That's another strategy that they've used. But they do qualify for a lot of state assistance. South Florida's beach management program is better funded than South Carolina's right now. I think like Beach Advocates, that group in South Carolina is really working hard for a dedicated funding source for communities like you to leverage. And I think support of that is really important. So those are two examples. It seems like everybody has a different model. Some uses TDT, some uses, all kinds of things and models that they use.
Ponte Vedra, you don't happen to know Ponte Vedra Beach, because that's kind of more of a private, not fully private.
Ponte Vedra was state money. Ponte Vedra was state and local money. They did pass the hat a little bit, but a lot of it, unfortunately, was post-hurricane relief money, because they didn't really have an erosion problem until Matthew and Irma. And so the legislature has a couple of pretty big buckets of money that came out to help communities recover from those storms. So they were fortunate in that sense, but no federal money.
Yeah, Chris, I think state of South Carolina has $1.5 million in their big sand bucket this year.
That's right. Florida has 50 to 75.
Wow.
Now, Florida has more shoreline than South Carolina, but nonetheless, it's a lot. It's not apples to apples.
Yep, not by any stretch.
No. And in Florida, they will only cost share up to 50%. So the local community has to go and get the other 50%, but with the cost of these projects, it's super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're beating on our lobbyist, so.
Yeah, keep it up. I'll be, the Beach Advocates Conference is at Hilton Head this January, so, and I'll be there for that as well. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chris, thank you, and firm. for the
Thanks,
help.
Evan.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to do this. It was very interesting, and I'm glad to hear that it is useful. And like I said, we're happy to help any way we can moving forward.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. We want to talk about next steps?
Yeah, Douglas, what's,
Well, so a lot of what you all had previously identified as recommendations, you held off to get this report. In your packet was that matrix with the things identified that you would just kind of confirm, I guess, or rethink based on the second opinion.
Can
So-
we maybe have a conversation about what we just heard a little bit? And I guess where I'm kind of going with this is, we just got this report that is an amazing, I think, forward-looking report that is done by a, significantly steeped engineering firm. I'd like to talk about how we can get these kinds of resources instead of going through all of our recommendations. We've been working on these for 2 years, and a couple of them made it through. How do we get some I think we need help. I think we need help beyond what we have now. I'm not talking about a replacement of the CSE organization, but this report has given us a taste of what can be and what the possibilities are with a deeply steeped engineering firm. It's a whole different set of resources. And I think we really should pursue, instead of us meeting and doing this, and we can talk about the committee makeups and when we're going to roll over here, but I think we need help. And we don't have it right now to the degree that we need it in order to get ourselves a very strong, proactive beach management plan. I'd like the committee to, I'm just throwing it out there, I'd like the committee to either look at a Foth Olson or some other firm to help augment what we have, but to help us come up with a very actionable beach management program that is going to be sustainable on all fronts, and technology-wise, funding-wise. What we're doing right now, we're out of our realm. I mean, it's not working. We are losing ground. We've been losing ground. They said we've been depleting beach since 2011 on one end, and it's unsustainable up at the north end. We're not getting anywhere, in my opinion. And I would really like to throw out to the committee that let's get some help from a firm such as this, and really get a proactive, documented plan in place that we can actually implement.
I agree with that, and I think we also need to target the state to get us some more money. 'Cause all
We can't do
these
this on our own.
studies, all these studies are great, but we don't have enough money to pay for it.
yeah, well, I mean, that's underway.
Right.
So,
So I think a
How
little
is
bit
that
more
underway?
pressure, or
Can you
just
please
keep going at it.
Well, I mean, we've charged our state lobbyists. We're connected with the South Carolina Beach Advocates, as Chris mentioned. I mean, it's just that's a slow burn.
Right, I know it's not gonna be
Yeah.
tomorrow, but I think we need to step that effort up.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I mean, obviously they put together a comprehensive product, and it's good to have a second set of eyes on it, and obviously a professional engineer, which is why when we were making decisions about an organization, this professional engineer had a license in the state of South Carolina, which he helped clarify, like, hey, what can we do? So I appreciate what you're offering and what you're saying, because obviously the data wouldn't be there without CSE.
Correct.
So I don't disagree with the comment.
So can we maybe put forward to go ahead, Gabe, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I agree also. I mean, it was very impressive, and it made me realize that there's definitely more out there than what we've seen. And a little bit frustrated that we have spent, I mean, I think this committee, I think we've done a good job on this committee, but I think that you know, we kind of reinvented the wheel a little bit, and we could, you know, but hindsight's 20/20.
I mean, there was a learning curve, right?
yeah, yeah,
There was a learning curve, and there wasn't precedent set before.
And I think it was helpful that we went through the process and we see where we are now and all of that. But yeah, I totally think we need to step it up a notch and, you know, being someone who has angst about hard structures, I think this has given me a lot of food for thought and, you know, it's made it, something that I think if solid engineering is behind it, then we can get behind it. I still don't think we're totally there, but I can see a path forward. But I'll say this one more time, and I hope this is the last time. I really think that when we're talking about the north end, that Wild Dunes has got to be a part of this. I mean, I'm thinking about if my house, and I'm sure as heck wouldn't want my house going through what I'm seeing right now, but I would also, I'm not sure how I would feel about my house having breakwaters in front of it. And that's not a decision that I feel like I can make for someone else. Because, I mean, I surf and I surf this whole entire beach, but I've never surfed that far up. But it sounds like there won't be surfing
No,
where those breakwaters are.
there will be a permanent change to the beach
Yeah.
and how it's used
And that
by
is in
putting
the-
these structures. I mean, you see it anywhere in the world that they exist. It will change the look and feel of the beach. Will it provide benefit of the sand and the nourishment? Yes, but it will change it permanently.
Yes, and that's not,
And that's where the studies come in to
that's where the
confirm if we've
studies
got
come in, but
other
it's also where
alternatives,
the people who live there have got to
And
have a say.
I'll piggyback on that. This report, the engineer is very clear. There's possible ramifications to, you could put these products in, it could hold sand in one spot, but adversely infect another part of the beach. They said they didn't look at the middle part. They didn't look at reaches 3 and 4. It's good right now. Great. But my understanding of hydraulics as an engineer with an engineering background will tell you, you put that groin out there, it's going to have an impact on where the sand then migrates to the middle of the island. So while it may end up holding the sand in the north, it could start and create turbulent flow to affect and strip sand somewhere else, which is why he puts in the report, like, there are possibles, and this is why it needs to be studied over a period of time. I mean, that's why
agree
this is
with you
good
100%.
information, it's critical. Well, yes, it needs to be more in-depth by an engineering product.
I agree with you 100%, but, and this is where I think we need to help. These studies that we've been talking about to prove out what are the upstream and downstream impacts, nobody
Yeah.
wants to put hard structures on the beach.
Yeah.
That is a last resort. Economically, we got to consider that, but we're,
sure.
we're 2 years down the road in our beach committee here, when we, you know, maybe if we, hindsight's 20/20, maybe we could have had some of those studies done by now. And that may be where we should have been investing some of our money and our resources and our assets. So to come to that conclusion so that we aren't as flat-footed as we seem to be where we are right now, we're gonna have to start the cycle now.
I mean,
I just think
I-
we should start that cycle. And I agree with you, Andrew. I don't want to see any downstream impacts. And we don't know that the groins or these breakwaters are the answer. They just
No.
said we need to get.
No, I mean, I see
proven
the,
out.
well, looking at it, I go,
Study.
there's merit in it. I don't think we're necessarily flat-footed, because even he said it, he's like, you gotta get sand on the beach.
We gotta get sand on the beach.
So, we aren't not acting. We are acting right now. We are looking to put sand. This is, how do you keep that sand on the beach? That's, all this was talking about, was how do you keep it and extend the longevity? Because, I mean, he makes a great point. It's not getting cheaper, and by going to a shorter interval, we're gonna cost ourselves more money. And you've talked about it a lot. These costs are getting higher and higher. So the longer you stretch
can't
it,
do this
the longer
alone.
you keep your car, the less you're wasting money on another car, right? It's the same thing with this sand, which is obviously a diminishing resource, so we don't have control of the wave action or any storm that's coming in the future.
Well, that would be a good reason to allow the beachfront property owners to protect their property. The more they can protect, the less we have to replace.
The protection he was talking about was protecting their structure, not about holding on to sand.
Well,
No, what he said,
well, we
even
can
he said it
extend
doesn't
that.
going to hold on to sand. I'm all for helping people keep their house, because I don't want the environmental impact of the house going, or I don't want to see someone losing their home. That's,
Well,
nobody's here wants that.
We can have a point of demarcation where on
Yeah.
landward is the homeowner's responsibility and seaward is the state and fed's responsibility. Everyone knows where they stand.
I mean, I think it's already there. It's just got to make the adjustments to the policy.
Right.
I think those lines are developed.
So are we okay maybe making that recommendation that we get some additional help? Is that something that the committee could get on board to, I mean, we could even bring that to
Yeah.
workshop on Tuesday,
push
on
to
next
council.
Tuesday?
Yeah. Push the council to, yeah.
What, I guess my question would be, what are we ask, what would we ask for?
I think we want the firm to put forth, I mean, again, this is a firm that is in a different realm. And I think this is the kind of help I think we need, whether it's Falthausen or somebody else. I mean, they clearly have done the pre-work. We might want to initiate, a conversation as to what it would take to put this plan together. I think we need an actionable plan that comes out of this as to how can we pursue all these possibilities at the same time, which we, again, we could have done it hindsight, and come up with what is, if we do these studies, what is the plan of action? Is the recommended solution after we get the study on Breach Inlet to put the groin in or some kind of a hard structure? Or do we look at the intercoastal to find out if there's something that can be done there to avoid the hard structure? We don't know, but we're not even looking at it. That's my point. We're not even looking at these options, and we don't have the studies in place to do them. So I'd like them to tell us what the plan is, to get us the information so that we can make the conclusions, to get a permanent, long-term plan in place for the beach management. We just don't have that right now. We don't have a beach management plan. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I don't know why you wouldn't just use this firm. I mean, they're down a path, they're used to South Carolina.
They're
They
just
dug-
did Hilton
dug
Head,
in
or
with
they're
us.
doing Hilton Head.
Can we do that? Don't we have to go out to, don't we have to bid?
Would you have to rebid it, Douglas, to get a plan put in place based on recommendations? Or can we just?
Yes. Yeah, I think you would.
Would need to rebid it?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to go through the whole procurement, right?
Yeah.
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 Well, I think I'm looking for this core document that is, what do we need to do? I'm not talking about procuring out the studies. I'm talking about what do we need, I think.
You want a schedule, is what.
I want to say, hey, what can we do to get to the conclusions? We just don't even have that.
But I think we need more than that. I think we need someone to hold our hand, walk with us through this, with the going to the government, the state, getting Wild Dunes on board, having a joint, combined, solid, first of all, the studies to know what we want to do, need, and it's not a want, it's a need, have to do, whatever, and then the people to walk us through that process and help us with, okay, here's the science, and then you take the science to the state. I'm assuming that's the way that it's got to work, and because they're not going to just say, sure, go ahead and put solid structures on your beach. That's going to be a fight, I assume, not necessarily a fight, but a struggle with the state. And so, I think that and I felt like from talking to this guy today, that they definitely have that history, ability, knowledge,
And I appreciated that he had a precedent. That was a question as we went through the report. They showed us Amelia Island, they showed us Bald Head Island, North Carolina. I'm like, where in South Carolina have you done this? Well, they were able to provide us an example. This has been done in the state. There is a precedent set. So we at least have
The breakwaters.
the breakwaters and a structure to say, hey, this has been done, this can be helpful to us. That was what I was looking for, and I was glad to see that. Because that hasn't been provided in previous meetings or by anybody else.
Well, another thing about his sand trap, which I think we now, he's probably gonna have to go get a patent on that. But it sounds like that's somewhat experimental and his, but it also sounds like that could be a fairly painless.
It's less expensive. That's what he was
from a
articulating.
cost
Yeah.
And from a, no hard structures. And so.
Yeah, seems like a
with-
good
with-
alternative.
Right, with that experimental idea, if it works, that would be fabulous.
Which, if I understood the way he was presenting it to us, is like, this is an executable thing that we could do now.
And yeah,
Or,
when we do the,
not tomorrow, obviously, but
when we
permitting
do
and
our-
everything else,
Within a good, reasonable.
Well,
time.
within a
and-
reasonable amount of time.
Well, but also on a time schedule that we are on already.
Yeah,
Like, we could
right.
do this, basically do our beach renourishment that's already planned for next year. And then that would, this, the sand trap would
Hopefully
be,
piggyback the same dredge against that project.
So looking for what you will want, is it a schedule? Is it Foth Olson's schedule of,
Like task and
Of
events, like
task
to,
and
You know what I'm
to
talking
move forward.
To get to a decision
Just get
point.
to the decision. Like, hey, what
so
are the
not
next
a,
steps?
not a comprehensive beach management?
No.
How would we
It's-
execute
it's
the
their-
recommendations?
It's their
Take this document.
follow
Yeah.
on from, if we were to want to do the
An
sand
executable
trap
path, an executable path
Or a
forward
hard
is really what
structure
we're
or
asking for.
whatever.
feasibility
yeah.
studies on specific
yeah.
hard erosion control devices.
How do we get there?
What studies, what regulatory path, what bidding, I mean, there are 4 or 5 categories, and we can, I mean,
Yeah,
I
so I
think
don't
we
think
could
it's a-
put a scope document together.
maybe we can-
It's the plan, not to execute.
Yeah, I
the
hope
plan.
you're getting to a point that we don't have to bid this, that we could just go back to Olson and say, take this document, put a plan around it, sequencing around it. and-
Exactly.
What's the timeline to execute
Yeah.
these recommendations that you provided us?
And flesh them out.
Is that a good summary of the?
I
what
think
you're
you're right,
looking for?
Andrew.
Because I mean, a number of times he's
Pretty standard.
said written and up there, a lot more study needs to
Yeah, right.
happen. So what is that? And get us to that decision point.
That also helps us tell the public, hey, here's the timeline. This is what we are working against. And what's realistic about evaluating a groin, evaluating the hard structures and getting through the permitting process. Like,
It's publishable
because
and it's trackable.
We're trying to set expectations. I've said that in other meetings. It's like, we have to explain what we really can do and what be reasonable about it.
In a timeframe.
And fighting Mother Nature the whole way.
Douglas, is that
Yeah.
help? Or
Yeah, that helps.
All right, anything else?
We're good?
Good to adjourn?
Sure.
11:57.
Thank you.
Douglas, thanks for coordinating.
Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you.